Hello, welcome. Welcome to our online class for Practical Research 2. I am super excited to have you here. Excited about all the amazing topics that we are going to discuss today. So, let's get started. Today, we are going to discuss your Practical Research 2, Quarter 2, Module 1. Choosing appropriate quantitative research design. But before we start with our lesson today, make sure that you have with you your Practical Research 2, Quarter 2, Module 1, your pen, and your notebook. In this module, you will be able to choose appropriate quantitative research design. But first, let's try to answer the following pre-test questions to determine how well do you know the topic at hand. Directions. Part A. Read the following sentences carefully and choose the letter of the best answer. Use a separate sheet of paper. For Part B, write T if the statement is true and F if it's false. Use a separate sheet of paper. Number 1. A random design refers to A. An experimental study, B. A cross-sectional study, C. A focus group, or D. An online survey. Number 2. A cross-sectional study is also known as A. Before and after study, B. Prospective design, C. One-shot or status study, or D. Pre-test, post-test design. Number 3. Some commonly used study designs in quantitative research are examined from 3 different perspectives. Which one is not one of them? A. The resources the researcher has available. B. The nature of the investigation. C. The number of contacts with the study population. Or D. The reference period of the study. Which of the following is not classed as an experimental design? A. The placebo designs. B. A cross-sectional design. C. The control group design. Or D. The comparative design. Number 5. Which of the following is least associated with a quantitative study design? A. Blind study. B. Reflective journal. C. Experiment. Or D. Cohort study. Part B, number 1. There exist 2 types of research designs only. Is it true or false? Number 2. Before selecting the research design, it is important to consider the type of phenomenon being studied and the possible characteristics of the research design. Is it true or false? Number 3. Experimental designs are only useful if we are dealing with a new phenomenon. Is it true or false? Number 4. When selecting a research design, a phenomenon should be in secret. Is it true or false? Number 5. A survey design is a form of experimental research design. Is it true or false? Let's check your answers. For part A, the answers are number 1, A, number 2, C, number 3, A, number 4, B, and number 5, B. For part B, the answers are number 1, F, number 2, T, number 3, F, number 4, F, number 5, F. How was it? Did you get a perfect score? Great! For a research to be carried out successfully, it requires suitable research design. This is a plan adopted by a researcher before data collection commences so as to achieve the research objective in a valid way. The essence of research design is to translate a research problem into data for analysis so as to provide relevant answers to research questions at a minimum cost. A research design is basically concerned with the aims, uses, purposes, intentions, and plans within the practical constraint of location, time, money, and researchers' availability. Hakim 2000. The type of study you conduct depends on the type of questions you are asking. This can be exploratory, descriptive, or relational. Exploratory questions start with what if. This is to get an idea of or explore an area of research that is not well understood. Rarely do these questions provide definitive answers. Rather, they lead to a stronger focus for subsequent research. Examples: what if a high-fat, high-sugar diet is physically addictive? Another example: what if human memory has an infinite capacity for storage? Descriptive questions usually start with what is or how. This is to characterize, explain, or describe variables that are related to a specific group of individuals. These questions are not concerned with relationships between variables, rather, they are concerned with simply describing variables. Examples: what is the average time spent watching TV per year? Another example: how many pounds does a college student typically gain in their freshman year? Relational questions start with does or is. This is to determine the extent to which specified relationships exist between variables. These questions provide causal explanations or descriptions of the relationship between two or more variables. Examples: do low levels of serotonin in the brain cause depression? Another example: is personal income related to life satisfaction? Several authors view research designs differently. However, a majority of such designs falls in the following categories: non-experimental, experimental, and quasi-experimental. Non-experimental design. Non-experimental design is basically quantitative research which does not involve experiments in the process of data collection. It is divided into three groups. Number 1, the survey research. Number 2, the causal comparative or ex post facto research. And number 3, correlational research. Survey research. This type of research provides a numeric description of attitudes, opinions, or trends of a population by studying a sample of that population. It is a method of obtaining large amounts of data, usually in a statistical form, from a large number of people in a relatively short time using closed-ended questions. Survey method is the process of collecting data from a sample of groups so as to determine the status of that group as per that time with respect to one or more variables. It is concerned with the present and attempts to determine the status of the phenomena being investigated. This method comes in handy when a researcher is studying several variables using large sample size and rigorous statistical analysis. Survey research observations can be cross-sectional or longitudinal studies. Cross-sectional means the observations are done at one or more point in time. It is descriptive, exploratory, and explanatory. Longitudinal study means the observations are carried out at different points in time. It focuses on trend analysis, cohort design, and panel design. It either uses questionnaires or structured interviews for data collection with the intention of generalizing the sample data to a population. Survey research method can be further classified into A. Descriptive survey, survey testing method, questionnaire survey method, interview survey method. B. Analytical survey, documentary frequency, observational survey, rating survey, critical incident, and factor analysis. The major drawbacks of survey design are A. Controlling against sample bias, which can greatly compromise
generalization of the findings to the population. B. Its dependency on the cooperation of the respondents, which in the long run determines the degree of the results' reliability. Causal comparative or ex post facto research. Causal comparative research is a type of non-experimental quantitative design where the researcher compares two groups or more. This comparison is performed with respect to a cause, which is the independent variable which has already occurred. Correlational research. Correlational research is a non-experimental quantitative design in which the researcher applies correlational statistics to measure and describe the degree of association among variables or sets of scores. Now let's move on to the experimental research design. Experimental research is the investigation where one or more dependent variables is manipulated to measure the effect on one or more variables. It is based on cause and effect relationship on selected subject matter. It employs the use of two groups, namely experimental and control groups, where the experimental group is given treatment while the control group is manipulated in order to establish the nature of relationship between the studied variables. There are different types of experimental designs. First type is the pre-experimental design. Pre-experimental designs are where the researcher studies in a single group and provides an intervention during the experiment. In this case, there is no control group to compare with the experimental group. The second one is the quasi-experiment. Quasi-experiments are where the researcher uses control and experimental groups but does not randomly assign participants to groups. The third one is the true experiment. It is where the researcher randomly assigns the participants to treatment groups. The last one is the single subject design. It involves observing the behavior of a single individual or a small number of individuals over time. Now, let us remember that a good research design shields a researcher from frustration by binding the research work together through a plan that outlines all the major parts of the research work together to address the research questions. The chances of success of research work are boosted when the initial part is correctly defined as a precise statement of goals and justification. After this, the sequential steps necessary for writing a research plan and then successfully executing the research work will be easier to identify and organize. The choice of research design for a research study should be based on the nature of the research, but not randomly picking without justifiable reasons. Now, let us enhance your knowledge about research design by answering the following activities. Let us practice. Direction. Search for studies in the internet and select one for each kind of quantitative research design. Fill up the table below. Let us reflect your understanding about the lesson. Answer the question comprehensively. You can cite examples or scenarios. Question: what makes choosing an appropriate research design critical or important in a study? Great job! You are doing well. Now, let us practice more. Based on the research titles that you have identified in the previous modules, determine the specific type of research design to be used. Justify your answers on why that specific research design is applicable. Fill up this table. And now, to fully assess your understanding of today's lesson, flip the pages to page 12 and answer the assessment questions. Direction: read the following questions carefully and choose the letter of the best answer. fully enhance your understanding about the lesson, let us do this enhancement activity. Direction: make a simple research plan that incorporates the type of research design that will be used in your proposed title. You can refer on page 14 of your module. After doing this activity, please submit your work to your respective practical research 2 teachers. Congratulations! You did a great job in completing your module today. And that concludes our lesson for today. Goodbye everyone and see you again next time.